What I'd now like to do is share with you two distinguished awards that we're given annually. The foundation has a committee that reviews journalism awards. Two of our critical areas that we provide awards each year is one goes on political coverage and the other looks at military issues. And we have two very deserving people that we're going to present these awards to with us here tonight. First of all, I'd like to read you portions from the citation and the award that's going to be given to our first award winner, which is Greg Jaffe, who is in his first year of working for the Washington Post after having served a number of others. And I might point out this is his third time he's received an award from the foundation. And I want to quote, "During a time of intensive divisiveness in Washington, journalists are increasingly challenged to transcend the routine, partisan back and forth in their political coverage. But Greg Jaffe of the Washington Post, in his first year as a White House correspondent, repeatedly overcame that divide in his even-handed analytical coverage of President Obama. In his reporting, Greg Jaffe is comfortable with both policy and politics. He manages to illuminate without burning and to include dissident and voices and those who are most involved in various issues. For his work, Greg Jaffe is the most deserving recipient of the Gerald R. Ford Prize for Distinguished Reporting on the Presidency for the year 2015. And I'd like to ask Greg if he will come up and receive the award. Greg? We want to get a picture of you over here. Come in. Sure. Pull these up for you.
Thanks very much for this. It's a terrific museum and it's a terrific honor, and I really appreciate it. I was just going to say something really quick about covering the presidency, which I've done for the last year now, after many years of covering the Pentagon and following Secretary Rumsfeld around for a few years, who I noticed over there. One of the things that surprised me with all the sort of the rancor and division in our politics is just how much respect the American people still have for this office. I noticed that the first time driving through Clinton, Tennessee in the presidential motorcade, I'm back there in the press van, and there are people who are just lining the streets just to catch a glimpse of the limousine, the beast, as they call it, as it rolls by. A few months later, I went to Watertown, South Dakota, where the president was speaking. I got there a day before, and remember people running out to the airport to watch the C-17s land and watch as they rolled off the presidential helicopter and the presidential limousine, and then lining the streets again to catch a glimpse of it as it went past. And then I went to a bar there in Watertown to listen as President Obama gave his speech, and people packed the bar on a weekday afternoon to hear him talk at the local community college about their town. And so, it's so easy to be cynical these days, especially with this election season. But I will say, following the president around for a year, looking at the reception that the office gets, it can be hard not to be hopeful as well. So that's it, and thanks for this award. I really appreciate it.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, there's a second prize that's awarded each year, and one of my colleagues, Carla, is the person who oversees this on behalf of the board of the foundation and does a terrific job, and you'll be hearing from her in a little while. So I'd like to read the recipient for the award on foreign reporting, and that it goes to Andrew deGrandpre. In a year of compelling and diverse defensive reporting entries, the judges select Andrew deGrandpre of Military Times as the winner of the Gearld R. Ford Distinguished Reporting on National Defense for 2015. As we approach the 15th year of the United States military forces engaged in combat in Afghanistan, which happens to be America's longest war, by the way, this comprehensive series addressed the complicated issues that have emerged and arisen in what is known as gray zone conflict. The investigative stories by Mr. deGrandpre explored the blurred lines between reality, perception, accusation, and missteps in the rush to judgment that characterize military operations today, particularly in areas such as Afghanistan. Mr. deGrandpre's investigative research brought to the fore the shortcomings of multiple bureaucratic systems that were intent on assigning immediate guilt in the absence of a full accounting of the actual events. In the full reporting of this oftentimes tense subject, the Military Times has done a great series and documented and examined in detail the complex paradoxes that define our own military times. Andrew, could you please come forward and accept our award? And we'd like to hear a few remarks from you. Please let me know if Andrew.
Good evening. Brad, thank you very much for that nice introduction. I'm honored to be here in Grand Rapids. This is my first trip to Michigan, and it's a lovely state and a lovely city. I'd just like to get a handful of thank yous out of the way first. I want to thank the Ford Foundation staff for organizing such a special evening and for your entire city's generosity and hospitality. Thanks as well to the contest judges for time and consideration given to evaluating not only my work, but that of my contemporaries in the media. I have to imagine that was a pretty difficult task. I'd like to congratulate Greg real quickly. He's an enormously talented reporter. I want to thank my support network back home in Washington, notably my editor, Alex Neal, who gave me an astounding 5 months plus to work on this project, and my better half, Aaron Sansoni, who's with us here this evening. And lastly, I have to thank Major Fred Galvin and the Marines of Task Force Violent, who deserve enormous credit for having the courage to come forward and share their story, hopeful that doing so would provide some measure of relief after enduring years of psychological turmoil for reasons I documented in this 5-part series. In reporting these stories, I learned about a condition called moral injury. There's a lot of talk about post-traumatic stress, particularly in the post-9/11 era. Moral injury was described to me as a wound to the human soul. And the allegations for which Major Galvin and his Marines were nearly imprisoned stem from a coordinated suicide attack and complex ambush in Afghanistan. A man driving a truck filled with explosives tried to murder as many of Major Galvin's Marines as he could, and then armed men standing along the sides of the roadway with rifles stood there ready to finish the job. These are the scariest circumstances, I think, imaginable on this planet. And miraculously, all 30 Americans on the patrol survived. Only one suffered a superficial wound to his shoulder. He received a Purple Heart, as a matter of fact. But no one believed their story in the immediate aftermath. And worse, the institution that had a duty to protect their presumption of innocence instead allowed a false narrative to take root and did little to set the record straight once the truth had been learned in a court of law. Major Galvin and his Marines were prepared to fight an enemy who wanted to do them harm on the battlefield. They accepted the risk that came with their assignment and fought bravely when put to the test. They never foresaw that their adversary would wear the same uniform that they did. To this day, they struggle to make sense of that, and it's been almost 10 years. Understandably, such an experience has left many of these Marines embittered, hurt, fearful, and ashamed. Moral injury, a wound to the human soul. They were not perfect. Who among us is? But in my best analysis of this unfortunate chapter of the Afghanistan war, I have concluded they deserved far better. And my hope is that this work will serve as a cautionary tale for those who bear the sacred responsibility of military command, uniformed personnel, and the civilian leaders who oversee them. I want to thank you all very much, and in closing, just a reminder that tonight there are 10,000 American troops on the ground in Afghanistan and nearly 5,000 more in Iraq and Syria. Please keep them and their families in your thoughts. Thank you very much.